I appreciate everybody joining. Thank you. This is Chris Hula. I'm the VP of Sales and Strategy for CyberSecOp, and this week's webinar series is on leveraging a fractional CISO. And what I've done, Oscar, if you can go to the next slide, is I've invited a really amazing guest, Oscar Jones, who is our CISO. I'll show you his bio as we come up. But Oscar and I worked together to sit down and try to put together an educational session on the benefits of having a fractional CISO. Even at the back end of this, we'll talk about the financial benefits, but there's so many more things above the financial side of why you would explore this particular approach rather than hiring an individual or a series of individuals as a consideration. And what you'll hear is both workforce, culture, finance, execution, all of that. On the next slide, what I wanted to do is to kind of give a good, just advance that, Oscar. On the next slide, this layered approach is something that's consistent that we're putting up for every one of our conversations to really give an idea of where this kind of fits in. And the CISO, fractional or full, should be looking at every one of these areas as this layered approach to security that incorporates so many different elements. It incorporates your governance, risk, and compliance expectations and requirements. It covers your practical side of things as far as pragmatic security, like advanced endpoint protection, data loss protection, encrypted backups. It also covers, as some of you have heard, what is required now from the cyber insurance industry to be able to get cyber insurance or to renew cyber insurance. So I just highlighted a few things that are, truly in the responsibility of your CISO, as opposed to the fact that they have the umbrella responsibility for all, both evangelizing, strategy, positioning, that kind of thing. Next and final slide for me is really introducing Oscar. Oscar is our CISO. He is the head and leads all of our fractional services, CISOs, risk managers, policy writers, analysts. Also a massive Dallas Cowboy fan, so if he has a minute, he might even share something on that. But Oscar is going to do an amazing job of leading you through some of the reasons why a fractional CISO is such an important consideration for a organization to consider. Oscar, thank you so much and appreciate you taking over from here.
Not a problem at all, and welcome everyone. I think right now we have just the one attendee, Mike Dean. So welcome, Mike. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask as we move forward through this. So, as Chris mentioned, leveraging a fractional CISO is more than just consulting, right? Sometimes you have a situation where you'll have a CISO, but you won't be able to get in contact with them. And if you have a full-time CISO, they're going to be so busy doing other things within the company that they may not be readily available for everyone that needs to have a conversation. So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we define it, right? So a fractional CISO, part-time executive, they can either sit on your board or they can just handle all of your security parameters within your environment and talk through those. As an issue arises, we love to sit down, understand what do we need to do next, who needs to be involved in the process, and what conversations we need to drive as well. So it's really about creating this strategy without the full-time cost of a traditional CISO, because you don't have to pay for our insurance. So you save money in that. So you leverage the expertise across multiple companies, which we do right now. And why is it important in modern cybersecurity? As organizations face evolving threat, they change every single day. We have threats that seen and unseen, internal and external, but we provide the necessary leadership to navigate the complex challenges while making sure we align with your overall business strategy by having the conversations with the CIO and the CTOs and COOs to make sure that we're all on the same page while we're having those ongoing thought processes. And what are some of the services? They include security assessments, policy development, whether or not you have a green field or you currently have policies in your environment that need to be tweaked and enhanced, we will also do that as well. And then also incident response planning, which is extremely important, especially within our current, threat vector across the world, compliance training and fostering a cybersecurity aware culture within the organization. Extremely important. So we're going to move to the next page. So here's the role, strategic leadership, extremely important, all about being same place, same time, same thought process. Risk management and doing assessments and implementing risk mitigation strategies. If you have a risk, you have a risk register that you created. How do we actually look at that and start to say, okay, you have some risk in your environment. They're either critical or high. What do we need to do next? Are they from any of our internal viewpoints? Have we missed a patching perspective? What steps need to happen before we can move forward and lower those risks? And we're not just talking about, when you say risk management, it also includes reputational risk, which I don't think a lot of companies delve into as far as, that part of it, because your reputation is really why your customers keep coming back. If you have a horrible reputation, customers will leave. And over a period of time, they'll just stop communicating with you overall. So, if you think about it from that perspective, risk management is key. How do we make ourselves be better for our customers as well as our employees? So looking and helping identify vulnerabilities and prioritizing those response is a central key that you have to think about on a consistent basis. And then we talk about compliance oversight, adherence to industry regulation and standards. I feel like they change on a weekly basis. It's not true, but that's what it feels like, because there's always something that's going to be changed within NYDFS or CCPA, or every year to 2 years, high trust will change something. ISO world, PCI controls change, I feel like every year and a half. So we have to make sure we're always on point. We always have to make sure that we're having the conversation with regulations, talking about those, trying to figure out the best way we can actually adhere to those while making sure that the customer has everything that they need in order to be compliant and remain compliant. And team collaboration, we promote a culture of teamwork by having conversations with various teams. We do have conversations with the executive team. We also like to have conversations with the engineers, the development group, because we want to know everything that's coming down the pipeline. What are they working on? Are they implementing the SDLC controls properly? Are they having the right conversations? Are they thinking about it the right way? And so we would have those conversations for you and give you a full report to make sure that you know exactly what we're doing and what's going to be happening next. Now, what are some of the benefits of engaging a fractional CISO? Cost effective, as I stated earlier, we have a very high level of security expertise, but we don't cost as much as a full-time employee. So it makes it financially viable for most businesses, whether they are a large corporation or they are just starting out. Access to expertise, you call us, we're there for you. Our goal is to make sure that we're holding your hand through the process step by step. If you have a third party that wants to have a conversation with you, we're there for you. If you want to have a conversation about frameworks, we're there for you. If you're having an incident in your internal environment, we're there for you to make sure that we are all having those conversations and talking about, here's what we should do next, here are the next steps. And then scalability. So as you grow, we grow with you. If you have a question, we're there. And the cost that for restructuring is very minimal, because we're already in your environment. We already know what's going on. It's always going to cost you less to have us on site to do everything that's needed from A to Z across the board. And then flexibility. Do we need to pivot from one thing that we're doing to another thing? Is there something that we need to discuss? So a lot of times when you have a full-time CISO, they kind of focus on one thing, whereas we have the ability to be, I like to use the example of being an octopus. We can do several things at once, making sure that we're kind of grabbing everything and pulling it in closer so we can get a better holistic view of it. Extremely important for us. And here's the benefits of it, of having a fractionalized CISO. Get a program manager, compliance manager, security analyst, security awareness manager, internal peer review team, quality assurance team, as well as procurement services. So these are all the services that would fall under the fractional CISO, but we would have those conversations to talk about, what do you need? Do you need a program manager so that we can actually go through whatever frameworks we're trying to implement? And for compliance, we'll have a risk manager doing a lot of that work on the back end, creating policies and procedures, And we're reviewing those with you in real time to talk about, all right, here's what we have, but here's where we're going to go. You may have a level one document for as far as your information is concerned. So let's say you have a wireless connection or you have an SDLC policy, that may be a level one. What do we need to do to get that to a level three? What steps do we need to take? What do we need to add in that perspective?
And I think I'd like to add something in here. So some
Sure.
organizations actually have fractional CISOs, meaning a person, right? And just like any position, hiring a person isn't the way to sit down and address the sometimes deluge of requirements or requests, right? You have to sit down and try to provide both strategic as well as functional and deliverables all at the same time. So whether it's a cybersec op that you're looking at, or if you're going out looking for a fractional CISO or hiring on your own, which we'll show later on, it's a matter of understanding that the ideal situation is to have a pool of resources that the CISO can call upon, take off the shelf, and put them back on the shelf when they're not needed. So I think Oscar might have mentioned if it's policy writing, to be able to sit down and write, hey, we got to pump out 10 new policies. Well, that's going to take, pretend it's 2 hours of policy. That would take all that time for one person. Now, if I can sit down and pull someone off the shelf while the CISO is doing other things or directing other services, it's a way better model than having a singular person, which we know those services are out there. But then who's actually doing the work? And if they're doing the work, what else can they be doing? So it's important when you're looking at your options for your organization to make sure that you're kind of looking at the downstream effect of the fact that that person should be moving the needle. And those things could be policies, run books, reviews, configurations on different products, like maybe your endpoint protection or your multi-factor or your single sign-on or the interoperability, all of it. So it's something to keep in mind that it isn't just this individual itself, but potentially look at the breadth of what that person brings to the table with its team.
Thank you, sir. Perfect. Okay, so now let's compare fractionalized CISO to traditional consulting. What are some of the differences, right? So a fractional CISO engages more with the organization. And you may say, well, how is that possible? Because that person is technically a consultant. But because they are there for a period of time, and it could be, 6 months, it could be a year if you're signing up with a full program, we're going to have different conversations with different people on a continuous basis. And the reason we do that is because we want to know what's coming down the pipeline, not just what's happening today, what's happening tomorrow. We want to know what's happening months from now. What visions does the senior management team, what are they on track to actually accomplish versus what can we provide with them as far as that service is concerned? Because, it's really about you need A, B, and C. Okay, we're going to provide you A, B, and C, but let's also talk about D, E, and F as it comes down the line and the conversation and the budget gets approved, because that to us allows us to build more of a conducive environment across the board, because now everyone knows who we are. They know who they need to come to have those tough conversations about security and what steps need to be taken next. So then looking at long-term versus short-term focus. So, traditional consulting, short-term. For us, is ongoing. We want to be a part of the family. And I know people say that all the time. And it's, oh yeah, we're going to be a family-driven environment, but we actually mean it. Trying to foster those families, you're going to have arguments. It's not going to. Sometimes your family members aren't going to get along with each other. But what we try to do is make sure that we're listening to everyone, understanding what their pains and points of hurt are. Because for us, we've gone through it. We've done it time and time again. I've been doing cybersecurity now for a little bit over 25 years, and I've seen and heard some of the craziest things you could ever imagine. If we have time at the end of this, I'll give you some stories. And value addition beyond consulting. We add value by integrating security into every aspect and resulting in sustainable practices instead of one-off. When you do a one-off project, it kind of ends right there, but we like to build upon that. No project for us ever ends. It's always a continuing process that we're looking at we finished this portion of, say, NIST CSF, but let's start talking about SOC as we're doing in this, because we know that that's where you're going. And based on the information that we've gathered from you and collected, we can see that you need to build upon your NIST CFS, which is basically the first layer. And then now let's start talking about SOC. Let's start talking about high trust. So whatever direction that you want to go, we're prepared to pivot as soon as possible. Now, how do you implement a fractional CISO in your organization? Assessment of needs. We talked about this. What do you need? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the corrective actions that you're already working on? Has there been a gap analysis? And if there are some issues there, we can talk about, even if you have a lack of resources, how do we get over that hump? How do we get to the next point? Because for us, there's no stop sign for us. We just see a yield sign. Sometimes you got to let something else happen, but we're never stop pushing our foot on the gas to continue to propel you forward. And because we know that threat actors are always looking at your environment as well, we give you the ability to look at it from the other side. If you have someone who's always pushing against a threat, or someone who's trying to get into your environment, we're going to guide you to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, we have an incident response process already built in, ready to roll. All you have to do is tell us that it's needed, and then we take the next step. So integration with existing teams, seamless onboarding process. You just give us a call. We pick the person that's best available for your needs and continue there. And how do we set those clear objectives? By defining the goals and expectations early in the process, so you know exactly what you're getting. But again, if we need to pivot, we do that. But as a fractional CISO, that allows us to do it a little bit quicker than most other companies would, and if you have a full-time CISO as well.
Well, and I think back to the point of the shared services, right? So it's a matter of being able to absorb and delegate at times, right? So those projects don't have to wait. The meetings take place, but there are resources in a good model like this to sit down and actually have a team working on it, as opposed to a singular person alone, because the workload is the workload.
Agree 100%. Okay. Now, success stories, real world examples highlighting specific instances. So, for us, we have several customers right now that have utilized us as fractional CISOs. And, I get calls on a consistent basis, all the team members do, to talk about issues that are coming up, things that may be seen or unseen. We just had an issue with a customer concerning spam. We talked them through the process. We walked them through step by step on how to correct that issue and how to lower that. And at the end of the day yesterday, what had started as 300 emails being sent every 15 minutes is now down to 2 emails being sent every 4 hours. The customer is very happy about that, but that's the kind of service that we provide, because even though we may be working on something specific for them, again, it gives us the ability to pivot as soon as possible once we find out the information that we need to act upon. So when you have an impact on the security posture, you analyze how it gets us to the next level. And because all of our customers are different, what we like to do is we like to combine those conversations, because we're learning too every single day. If you're a retail shop, we're going to have a conversation with you about retail. We're going to talk about your point of sale systems. We're going to talk about your inventory. And that's one of our largest customers right now. And we do that, very well. At least I think the customer would tell you that. But for us, we make it fun. We try to listen, we try to understand, but we also try to make sure we're not missing anything by being in the meetings with the executive team, by having conversations with the presidents of the company. That is what we bring to the table. And then some of those lessons learned, we utilize in having conversations with various other customers. For us, if we don't learn something from something that's occurred within your environment, then we've already failed you. And again, this goes back to the learning and understanding and listening, but also comprehending. Because if I tell you a story and you don't comprehend it, it doesn't really do you any good. So we try to take every lessons learned in every event that we do, whether it be a tabletop, whether it be just a generic conversation, we utilize that, because we're always going to hear something every day that's different than what we would normally discuss or talk to a customer about. But this allows us to take that information and move it on to the next level of compliancy across the board for all of our customers. So what are some of the challenges and considerations? Potential pitfalls: engaging a fractional CISO without a clear understanding may lead to misalignment and ineffectiveness. That's why we like to pay attention to understand what your environment's about, what steps need to be taken. It sounds simple, but it's complicated because if somebody's not, let's say you're a retail shop and they don't have any experience in the retail environment, they're going to be a horrible choice for you. They're not going to move the needle, so to speak. So understanding that, going to the meetings, having those conversations, those tough conversations, extremely important. And they need to be invited to those, but those are some of the potential pitfalls. You want to make sure that the fractional CISO has the experience necessary in order to move the needle. So how do you manage those expectations? Well-defined communication regarding scope and limits. Again, understanding what you're signing up for, and so we can understand exactly. We'll give you a document and you give us the information. If that information is erroneous when you're filling it out, at least initially, then that's gonna be a challenge, because now you got to go backwards in order to move forward. The goal is to make sure, it's kind of like, if you think about a project management, what's our scope? If you tell us the scope from the beginning, we get to move the needle, because now we know exactly what we're walking into and you know exactly what you're getting from us. So it's about having that open dialogue and conversation that has to happen from day one. Otherwise, we will all fail, and no one wants that. So how do you ensure with the business goals? The success hinges on the ability to align the initiatives with broader business objectives and making sure that we have clear strategic connections. That means having the right people in the right conversations at the right time. And I think that's not only in the cybersecurity world, but that's also in life. You want to make sure that you have a clear viewpoint of what needs to occur. My wife asked me the other day to wash the dishes. I forgot, I was in trouble. But she gave me a clear thing that I had to get done that I didn't accomplish. But I did make up for it later, because I did the dishes twice. So I think I'm off the hook now. But you want to make sure you have that as a baseline, because otherwise, if you miss that part of it, you've already messed up the entire project. So we want to talk about, what do we want to accomplish in having these conversations? What is our next step? Who needs to be involved? Because the communication tree is extremely important to follow. Chris, did you want to take this part, sir?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the things when you sit down and kind of look at, where Oscar and I have led the conversation a bit, you've got this choice of, well, certainly no CISO, a singular CISO, a CISO with a team, or kind of taking on the job yourself. When you sit down and kind of look at in an organization of, I would say, moderate to large size, because nobody can really afford, a mid-sized firm or a small firm can't afford the 5 resources on the left-hand side. So it could be looked at a couple different ways. One way is you're looking at those 5 resources costing about $640,000 a year on an annual basis, or if you hire the one person, they still have to do the work of all the other 4 people. And that doesn't include the list of software platforms that you would need to sit down and actually perform the job too. Otherwise, you're doing all of this in Excel. So you're looking at somewhere over $700,000 a year if you were going to round out the team. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, you're looking at a fraction of that from a fractional CISO model, and certainly one that we run where we're able to put these resources on and off the shelf, which again, I think is the most optimum way to do this for any organization. Why pay for the risk manager if you're only going to use that person 4 months out of a 12-month period? Or the security awareness manager, or run vulnerability tests that might take 2 months to do, but I'm paying that person $104,000 for a 12-month salary. So realistically, this ability to sit down and kind of understand the ROI of that hiring is certainly an important element. And the fact that these numbers are also about a year old at this point, and even slightly older than that, when I had a touch point with a friend's son who was actually coming out of college, and UPS hired this college grad with no experience for $100,000 as an entry-level security position. So the numbers are only escalating. The job postings for resources are over $3 million. So the market is a seller's market. So these numbers are probably conservative, but it's something I think is to be aware of as you're looking at this as an option.
Thank you, sir. All right. All right. And so in conclusion, how do you maximize the value from a fractional CISO? You reflect on how the CISO can change and transform an organization's framework while being cost effective and expert driven. Our jobs are to know all the frameworks with all of the controls and most of the sub controls. So that requires us to be on point and understanding of pretty much every framework that exists, even the ones that we don't utilize that very often. But our goal is to make sure we understand what we're talking about. You don't want to have someone inside who understands partial parts of it, but they don't understand the overview of it. They don't understand everything about it. So it gives you a different perspective of thought because they're telling you part of the story, but not the whole thing. It's kind of like having, when you tell your child part of a bedtime story, but you leave out the best part. And they're like, wait a minute, what happened? What happened to the Wicked Witch? We want to tell you everything that you're going to have to run into, because that's extremely important to us to let you know that we understand your plight and we're here to make your life better. We're here to hold your hands through the process. That's extremely important to us. What are some of the future trends? We talk about how do we help you ongoing? Even the challenges. This is what I was stating earlier about seen and unseen. Some of the things that you may not be coming out of, that you may not know that are coming down the pipeline, so you're not prepared for them. The 0 days, those we all have to deal with. But what about because we missed a patch on a server? Why are we not looking at the auditing aspect within AWS? We're not looking at Control Tower the way we should. Why is the cost of our E2s are so expensive coming from AWS and Azure? Why is that happening? So we're going to look at all of the aspects of your internal environment across the board so we can have those intelligent conversations with you. And so for final thoughts, incorporating insights and experiences from discussion, it reinforces the potential value that we can bring to all organizations. And that is what we try to strive for every day. It's extremely important for us to have those conversations, but to understand what you're trying to accomplish and how we can add value to it. Extremely important to us. So here are some of the key takeaways. Schedule a consultation with our sales team members. Chris, who is our expert VP of sales. He and I have worked quite a bit of time together, and we work very well together. So our goal is to make sure that we continue to build up the business, but at the same time, provide a service that's actually meaningful to all of our customers. How do we benchmark your security program maturity against industry standards? And we're not just talking about CMMC, we're talking about how do you look? How what you have in your environment currently, how does it dictate from a similar size company to yours? Are you better, worse? What do you need to increase? And how do you create a security leadership roadmap outlining what responsibilities to retain in-house, outsource, or augment with a fractional CISO, and align with your board and executive team on the benefits and operational matter and model of a fractional CISO to ensure organizational buy-in, because that's extremely important. We want to make sure that everyone knows who we are, what we're there to do, and how long is it going to take for us to do it. If there are any questions during that time frame, we'll be more than happy to answer those almost immediately for you. So here are some of the key takeaways once again, and why partner with CyberSecOps. Chris, I'll let you take that one, sir.
Yeah, I mean, it's just part of it is this is the only part of the infomercial, which is really our ability to sit down and actually make all of this come true. What Oscar put together for you is intended to be generic from an educational perspective of the things you look out for. So whether it's CyberSecOps or someone else, we certainly would recommend an organization that actually has that collection of services, that ability to sit down and actually put resources on and off the shelf so that you are stretching your dollar as much as you can, but also meeting delivery times. And we believe this model so strongly. This is the model we've constructed probably over the last 9 years. And we can provide, a plethora of references and firsthand experience, but it's really this ability to follow a methodology, understand the process, have the right person available, be available, deliver on time, have the ability to be an extension of your organization. Oscar's heard me say this a million times. He echoes the same thing to his crew. We want to act, a CISO should act as a W-2 employee, meaning that you are first of mind, whether you're fractional or full-time. So when you're interviewing somebody, again, whether it's us or someone else, you're looking for those kinds of behaviors in that speed date process of trying to find the right resource, the right partnership for your organization. And we think we check all those boxes off for you. Oscar, on the next slide, just to kind of close everything out, we'll definitely send everybody a copy of the deck, a copy of this, a link to this recording, and then these are the next 3 educational webinars that are coming up. You can get them on our Eventbrite site. It has all of the events coming up through, I think it's October 2nd is the last one we have posted right now. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Oscar, so much for your time. It's been a wonderful education process. And again, we look forward to the opportunity to helping you and certainly answer any questions you might have regarding this process. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.